everyone. Hi, this is Build Your Brand with Goldie Chan, and today I have such a special guest with me. I'm so excited. Everyone, this is Rob. Rob, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I guess my background is mostly in video games, but it started out in broadcast. So back in the day, I worked at G4, which used to be a video game network. And from there, I started developing what we refer to as content on the internet now. So videos, podcasts, streams. I was working on like streams back when it was just in TV.
Oh my gosh.
And since then, I have gone into a little bit of marketing, a little bit of PR, curation, but a lot of my focus has been on indie games. So it's a lot of like smaller titles, lots of different studios, as well as I work with a lot of content creators and influencers in order to help them understand like what it takes not just to make great content, but also like what it takes to actually create an audience for that content, because you kind of need both. You need good content and you need a good audience to watch it.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head right now, which is as we are all stuck indoors, or a lot of us are stuck indoors right now, we've been thinking about virtual events for growing our communities. And I find that games are such a beautiful example of that, because by the very nature of games, I know that, in the last few years, we've talked about gamification a lot with a lot of different brands. So Rob, how do you think about bringing in more active community members when you are doing virtual events?
I think it's imperative to figure out who your community is, to focus on your community and understand what value you bring to your community when you're doing virtual events. Actually, this morning, I was talking to some event organizers from around the world who were talking about, okay, we're about to come out of COVID. We're people from Australia, people from Europe, people from even America who are looking at, okay, what are we doing like the end of this year, beginning of next year? Like, what does this look like now that we've had this whole year plus of virtual events? And now we want to sort of open the doors again. Like, what does this look like? And I think
so. Are they talking about hybrid events now? Are they talking about both in-person and then also some for the folks who don't feel comfortable going to in-person events yet?
It's a little of both. It's a little about all the above, because what we've seen with virtual events coming through this year is that you can reach the people that you want your audience to talk to, the people that you would usually bring for panels or games to show off, are now like at a click of a button. It's like, why do I need to get into an airline, book a hotel, go to, Seattle or Boston or where have you, if I want to get like the latest news, because that's all going to come to me through virtual means. And so the question comes down to, okay, what does a PAX mean to you? What does, if Steam is a platform where you can purchase games, you can also download demos, and Steam has been very smart, I would say in the last year or so, in order to create a platform where these virtual events can live. And so now these talks that you would usually have in your physical events or the demos, now you can just download them for free. You can like sit at home and like, get the things that you want out of it. So what does a PAX mean when all of these elements are only a click away? And so now we're looking at community. What does your event mean to a community? And I think a lot of events now are going to have to take a hard look at the community that is surrounding them and how they support their community, as well as how they are talking to their community. And maybe we're looking at not like events as singular points, but events as, a precipice that we start to build on from earlier, maybe 4, 5, even 6 months out, where you have smaller digital events all to bring up larger and larger pieces that are going to have it. PAX, for instance, which is the largest consumer-facing event that's out right now, has already put out some surveys asking, would you like to be a part of a pack subscription? Which in this service, they're looking at free games, they're looking at panels, they're looking at monthly events. And so the question comes down to what does that mean to you as a consumer?
Right.
What does that mean to you as an audience?
Right. And I think that's so interesting to think about all of these subscription options that are happening right now as many virtual events are becoming blended, right? They are both online and offline. I know the similar thing happened with VidCon this past year. Now there's VidCon Now, which is the virtual version of VidCon, which is a huge video conference that happens every year in Anaheim. And now there's talk, of course, of doing a blended version that's both in person later this year, as well as online. And I think a lot about big events that are also happening at the end of this year that, Rob, I think you know people who are on the fence about going to some of these events, and I will name one of them is Comic-Con.
Yes.
For all the nerds out there, this is one of the largest nerd conventions, certainly in the US, and people fly in from all over the world to do this. A lot of major brands and also major film franchises, etc., all have a presence at Comic-Con every year. In fact, it's been a little bit of a tentpole place to release anything new. And so it's been odd to have it missing for even 1 year.
Absolutely. I think it's a lot of big publishing sites, obviously Marvel, DC, Warner Brothers, like they would usually use Comic-Con as their place to announce their sort of like, what is the next season going to look like? What are the next things they're going to do? But I think a lot of these platforms, I mean, even in the video game world, we have Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, are now turning internally and sort of like finding like their own voices. So Nintendo has been doing virtual sort of they've been doing virtual events, or they've been doing virtual talks. Actually, there's one tomorrow that Nintendo is doing about a bunch of indie games that they're showing off. And so it gives them a chance to like roll out new information as they see fit, like to be able to, you know, talk about things when they are ready versus a certain time when an event is actually happening. But as Nintendo has found out earlier this year, they are, when you have an event, people have an expectation of what's coming out. And so Nintendo has very much had to temper that expectation every time they have an event where it's like, okay, here's what we're talking about. Here are the things that we're mentioning. No, we're not coming out with this. No, we're not coming out with that. No, we're not going to talk about this. Please keep your temper, because if your expectation is high, even if you don't build it, there is an expectation from the audience themselves where they have like sort of driven this hype train, because a lot of content now is sort of driven on hype. Like, this is going to be the best thing ever. This is the things they need to be talking about. Like, one person's going to say like, oh, we're going to see like a new trailer from Game X. The next person's going to be like, we're going to have hands-on. The third person's going to be like, it's going to drop that day. And so like you're like this whole sort of like snowball effect starts to build up. And so now it's like, okay, how do you deliver this information in such a way that you're not overhyping or creating the sense of overhype to people, but still giving people a reason to show up, giving people a reason that they want to be there or watch what you're going to be doing.
And what you're describing is fascinating, because it is the opposite problem, I think, of what a lot of people experience. So Nintendo is in the lucky place where when they say they have something to announce, all of the fanboys, for lack of a better word, fan people, rush and they think something big is going to be announced. Now, for other brands, that might not be the case, right? They don't necessarily have people who are chomping at the bit to watch their live stream or watch their announcements. And how do people get part of that share of attention right now when there is so much happening online?
How do you fight the never-ending onslaught that is the internet itself? I think that is the $1,000,000 question everyone's still trying to figure out. It's like, how do you make something valuable? How do you make something an event? And I think for a lot of people, you start with community. You have to start small, and you have to start like with your base. What do they value? What do they need? What gets them excited about what you are doing? And I think that what you do, you start to grow from there. So start to build out, start to manage. And it's like I said, like a lot of these events are now looking at a 6-8 month sort of like tail as they're running up to an event, because you need those 6 to 8 months in order to build what is exciting, to figure out like what is the thing that's going to drive people up there. How can you start to collect data? How can you start to figure out like who are the people who are watching you? How can you figure out what is going to like energize them? Who are they?
So you're saying a 6 to 8 month lead time, even on virtual events right now, is helpful to make sure that people will actually sign up, actually tune in to watch and meaningfully engage in that virtual event.
Absolutely. I think it's imperative that people start to actually look at their audience, start to look at their data, and start listening to their community. Because if you're not building up community, if you're not listening to the people who are going to be coming in, spending time, even if it's free, time is still a resource. And I don't think a lot of people think about that. I think we're still in the idea that, you create content and they will come. And that's just not it anymore, because everyone's creating content. So we now need to look at community. We need to look at the needs of the people. We need to look at, who are your fans, who are going to be there to support you, and how can you turn those people who are motivated to come see you to bring their friends, or to let other people know what's going on, because those are the people who are going to help you fill those virtual seats or even those physical seats once we start opening the doors again.
So really tapping into, existing community in order to make sure that they are RSVPing for your virtual events right now, before even thinking about growing outside of that, potentially small immediate community, and then inviting outside folks once you've gotten some of those RSVPs is maybe the way to start thinking about virtual events, to make sure that you are getting attendance at your virtual event and to give enough lead time, it also sounds like. So not announcing something a month out or a couple weeks out. I know I've certainly actually spoken at events over the last year where things are announced 1 month before or less than that, and then folks are scrambling to get the RSVPs. So really thinking about how you can pre-announce things.
I would say look at it as a continuation. Mm-hmm. You almost want each events aren't the stopping place. It's just a part of your journey. And it has to be the part of the journey as the audience, part of the customer that's going in there. And it's like, okay, what is this part of the journey? What makes this important? What makes this that's going to go into it? And that's why I'm saying like 6 to 8 months going in, you need to know like what you need to start building those relationships. You need to start building those connections with the people that you're going to get out there. And it may even be longer for some people where you don't know exactly what your value is or what your voice is, or like what is the thing that you're bringing to the table. Because there are so many virtual events out there that, they put up a live stream and they're like, well, job's done, when no one comes to see it, or it just doesn't matter going into it. So I think it is a matter of, again.
And who is, of course, consuming, I always think about this too, who is consuming those videos when they're done? right?
Absolutely.
The long form live streams, when they're done and they're recorded and handed off to the poor overworked social team, wherever,
well, absolutely.
whatever brand this at.
And I think you bring up a really good point. It's looking at an event again, like you have this build up to the event, but then you also have this work that goes after the event itself. So it's, you have a talk. Let's say the talk goes for, 30 minutes. Maybe it goes for an hour and 30 minutes. Who knows? But what is the parts of that talk that are meaningful? What are the things that people are going to walk away from that they're going to be like, oh man, I can't believe like so-and-so said this, or oh man, like this is such a great thing. Again, I think it's a lot of people who, putting together podcasts, putting together talks like this. You need to figure out like, what are people going to walk away with? Cut that down, figure out what those bits are, and then like start seeding the area, being like, look, here's what we had. Here's a bit of like the information that we're going to tell you about. We're going to share with you. Here's what people find valuable. But if you want to be one of the first to know what's going on, or you want to be a part of like the audience asking the questions, you have to show up. You have to be here. You need to like have this value right here, right now.
Right. I think this is so funny because it just harkens back to when you and I think more recently you have worked on Twitch streams and things that require that kind of immediacy already in terms of response and in terms of community, even before, of course, this flood of online events. So it's very interesting to see all of these brands and all of these, brands and people who were never really online before try to transition to also pulling their entire community online and engaging online.
Absolutely. I think it is, a lot of people look at content as sort of the end game, and you have to understand content is not the end game. It is a stepping stone. It is another platform in which you're moving people around. It is what you're getting people, putting people on to go to your Discord, or the thing that you're putting people on to watch your next video, or the thing that you're doing in order for them to click that buy button. And so I think that instead of looking at videos or looking at events as sort of like that end goal, you need to figure out, it's like, okay, where do we go from here, and how are people getting into here? So it is all the different things. And again, like you said,
and then also post that, right?
Yeah.
So once you've you're lucky enough to get an audience, you have people who watch, you have people that engage, what do you do with that content afterwards? You can repurpose that content and use it later.
Oh, 100%. And you should be figuring out like,
and you should know that before you even do the event.
You need to think, and it is, again, it's like one of those things where you need to go into it and be like, okay, what do I want to get out of this? Like every talk should have X number of clips that I can get out of it. From those X number of clips, we're going to reshare them, X and Y number of times, or like, what are the big key points? And it's like, you can even go down to like even the questions that are being asked during the interviews themselves, because you're often having to sort of dig into that point as an interviewer, being like, okay, I need someone to mention, I need this person to mention X, Y, and Z, because I know this is sort of like the meat of what they're talking about. And I need
and then them you can clip it out later.
Flip it out, use it, and use it often, because that is the only way that a lot of people can see things online. Is
and once again, I think a lot of this is actually very Twitch, right? Thinking about doing clips from a very long live stream, pulling out meaningful content from doing a live event. This is very much the world of Twitch philosophy.
It's Twitch, but it's also everything else. Like we're gonna, like, as we're going into more the audio side of things, I think we're also going to see like, how do you clip out audio? How do you get those like sound bites out of like whatever's being spoken out? Because now, I mean, Clubhouse has demonstrated, love it or hate it, that
Right.
a lot of people really want this sort of like content that you can listen to while you're doing other things. Or like, how does this work on, Twitter Spaces? How does this work on Instagram? And then like, how do you get those clips out? And then maybe we're looking at a future that, you're talking to your Alexa, and now we're getting like the best of like whatever it is. Maybe events now become like podcast packs where you get to hear the best of whatever the event is, the best of E3, the best of PAX, the best of Comic-Con, where you can just listen to the panels come out and they're edited down. You get the best stuff and you can just sort of like go about your day and still get like the things that you need out of it.
Although I will say, to be the contrarian, one of the things that people love, right, about Clubhouse is these lengthy Clubhouse rooms where there might be something totally crazy being said very spontaneously over the course of 1 or 2 hours or more in a room. And so folks they might want that clip later. And I think these are two different audiences, right? The audience that wants that clip, interesting piece out, and then the ones that want to be rewarded like a treasure hunt for sticking to something and listening through several hours of content.
And I think what you have there is sort of the bits that go from audio, from person who is consuming the content to the person who's showing up for the content.
Right.
Where you are no longer listening to the podcast, but you're like, you want to show up to this talk because you never know what's going to happen. Who knows who's going to show up? Oh, it's going to be MC Hammer again. Oh my God, he's all MC Hammer loves some Clubhouse, but it is going to be that thing where it's like you want to be there. You want to be in the moment when they're doing that.
You want to be literally in the room.
Exactly, because now you are like tweeting out, oh my God, I can't believe this just happened. Or, oh man, you won't believe what I just heard, because now everyone else, you're going to be the person who's giving everyone else that sort of like that clip, that sort of
and I definitely want to pull that I think is the last point we'll talk about, but that social clout that you get from being at an interesting event that your community cares about, and something big for your community happens at that event. And if you were the first person to pull it out, or one of the first people, and to share it with your community, you get that social clout.
Right. I think it's funny that sort of flies into, I'm starting to hear more people bring up like status as a service, where you have those moments where people want, because you're looking at, again, Clubhouse is a very good sort of part of this, but you see it now on Twitter Space. You're seeing this on Discord now, where you want to be the person who's at the top of whatever this social food chain is. You want to be, if you're not the person who's on the stage, you want to be the person who's front row seats. If you're not the person who's front row seats, then you want to be the person who's getting the good stuff and sending it out to everyone, because that's the status that you're giving everyone else, where it's like, it's not
and
just...
that used to be what was the in-person convention thing to do, or in-person conference, which is you were there physically in person, you got the photo or you got the soundbite, you shared that on your socials within your community, and that gave you some element of being elevated, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's this status, this idea of like you were there in the room, that is going to go forward, not just in these virtual areas, but also in the real life areas that they need to figure out. It's like, okay, how do you make this space? How do you make this physical space now just as rewarding as the digital space?
And I think that is a really interesting note to end on for this chat on virtual events and gaming. Thank you, Rob, for joining us here on Build Your Brand. We were so lucky to have you.
Thank you for having me here. It's been a great time.